Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. Yesterday I recorded reviews of DuckTales and Uncle Scrooge. I'm scheduling my videos now, so I don't know when this will come out in comparison to those, but uh, I was looking back on those videos and I'm thinking about it, and I want to advocate something for you guys on that you should go out and buy both these series and I haven't bought the Donald Duck comics yet by IDW, but I've been so impressed by the quality of several of these that I'm gonna go get that. I also read the Halloween special Giant Halloween Hex starring Magico Dispel, and that was really good. A long time ago, maybe one of his earliest videos on the Diversity in Comics channel was how old is too old to read superhero comics, and he was talking about kind of the old saw argument of do you eventually just grow out of superhero comics and need to move on to adult literature. So I want to address a similar topic to that, but in my own way, and that's maybe an issue of taste. There's lots of different kinds of comics. You know, there's adventure comics, there's weird independent comics, there's serious comics, and there's kind of Disney-esque, animal kids adventure comics. And what I would like to advocate is that if you have kids, especially, you should be looking at these comics. Your kids should have these kinds of comics available to them in their library. And you as an adult would still benefit from reading these kind of comics, even if there's a matter of personal taste where you just prefer high action superhero stories, or if you prefer more serious Art Spiegelman, Mouse, or even like advanced literature. I feel like this should be a reference point for your imagination and for your reading. So let's talk about that. So the series being published by IDW include Uncle Scrooge, which is reprinting mostly Italian comics, but also Dutch and Swedish comics from the 60s to the 90s and into the 2000s. DuckTales has, I didn't notice this until I got a comment, so thank you, but DuckTales also hires Italian artists, but I think the writing direction seems to be coming from the American creative team, mostly Joey Cavalieri. And I really liked I liked a lot about issue 2, and I liked issue 3 even more. The little weird mistakes from issue 2, I wasn't catching those. The panels weren't as weird. So part of this was I read issue 3 and really enjoyed it. So now I kind of wanted to rescind my dodginess about issue 2 and warmly recommend this series to you as well. I am so excited that IDW is doing this. When I first saw they were doing Scrooge comics, I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe this was just a cheap cash grab on the character for people interested in the new DuckTales show. This is really good stuff, and I really want to see this aspect of the industry supported. Well, there's a old hat debate in comics, and this is older and bigger than just comics. If you don't like something in an industry, do you leave the industry? Do you boycott it? Do you not spend any money on the industry? Or do you try to be selective and vocal about what you buy and why you buy it? And I think there's good arguments for both strategies. If a company became so pathetic in the kind of content it made, then there's no point buying it or supporting them anymore. You just let them make the weird content they want to make. You go buy actually good stories, and the bad companies go away. There's an argument that if there's a bad company that's maybe rude to fans or something, then even though you don't like that, the other argument that's the one. On one hand, there's a boycott argument. On the other hand, there's the Buycott argument. I borrowed that term from Steven Crowder. So the Buycott argument would be, even if you don't like SJW Marvel, you go buy all the good Marvel comics you can find, to send a signal to Marvel that, hey, we like this good stuff. We don't like this garbage tier stuff. Make us more of the good stuff. And by spending your money on that, you are voting with your dollar, which is more effective than just not buying at all. If you not buy at all, Marvel suffers, but they don't necessarily know why they're suffering or how they can fix it. If they are getting the signal that the good books are selling more than the bad books, then they get the signal to make more good books. So IDW has a similar problem where you could say SJW Marvel, you could say SJW DC, you could say SJW IDW, but the SJW is foreign from this because, at least for these series, they are bringing over foreign comics that are probably not as affected by the American university system as as the current comic scene is, and they're just bringing in all these quality adventure stories from all across the globe. It's like I'm getting a grab bag of Swedish comics I'd never get to see, and Italian comics I'd never get to see, and Dutch comics I'd never get to see. This is incredible. I support this so much, and I want to see this succeed. I want IDW to know that there is a market for translating and bringing over foreign language comics to the American market if those comics are good universal stories that anyone can appreciate. I want more than just like a grab bag of these. I want to see all the Italian comics getting published, all the Swedish comics getting published, all the Dutch comics getting published in English. But for that to happen, the IDW needs to get the signal that this is a good thing to do. Do more of this. Yes, yes, yes. So why should you read Uncle Scrooge comics if, gosh, furries, but if it's just not your thing at all, if anthropomorphized cartoon ducks and mice aren't your thing at all, why would this be a thing you should read? Maybe I could convince you, buy it for your kid, even if it's not your thing. Buy it for, if you don't have kids, nephews, nieces, buy it for someone. Make it a Christmas present for someone in your life. But let's talk about the universal good stuff I'm finding in these kinds of books that I think you should be aware of. So in this one, what I notice is just the emphasis on not just Greek myth, Achilles, Hercules, and Hermes, but even enough of a retelling of those Greek characters' stories so that you understand what the powers are, what their weaknesses, things like Achilles being dipped into the river Styx. A function of kind of Disney comics and superhero comics is because a lot of them were written by people who were literate and well-read on mythology and literature, they made surprisingly literate comics where they were pulling from all of these stories and cultural references. And the consequence was that for a generation of people, Disney comics became their crash course in things like Greek mythology. If you read Scrooge McDuck comics, you'd learn about things like Montezuma and the Aztecs and the Italian Renaissance. You would get a lot of great cultural reference points from reading these comics in your youth. And this is an especially good one where they don't just use the Greek god characters for the sake of using the Greek god characters, but they actually tell you enough of the story of the Greek god characters that you get, well, especially Achilles, that you get a, if I were a little kid and didn't know who the Greek god characters were, I would forever have a cultural reference point after reading this excellent, well-illustrated comic, very dynamic, very well posed. I saw some red arrows somewhere, which annoy me, but that's kind of a throwback to the 60s era of these type of Disney comics. Magica looks good. Wow. Okay. So I guess that is a great segue into the second point, which would be the quality of the illustration. So dynamic superhero art might focus more on things like, the punch to the face and feeling the force of that punch, the musculature of the human body. But the appeal of this kind of a drawing is the fluidity of the line, the visual comedy of the characters. And they're so related that if you love the medium of superhero comics, you're gonna find a lot to love in the medium of Donald Duck comics. If you love the medium of Donald Duck comics, you're gonna find a lot to love in good superhero comics, because these are stories which fit so well into the media that's right in front of us. It's hard to imagine these stories. You could adapt these stories into an animated cartoon, but they wouldn't quite have the same feel and the same punch. You have to change things when you adapt them so they fit the new medium, and the different mediums have different strengths and affect you in a different way. You laugh at different things in a printed comic than in a cartoon or in a movie. So, what have I talked about? I've talked about the quality of the art in these comics. I've talked about how excited I am that IDW is doing this, because I was expecting just a cash grab. That's a tongue twister. I've talked about the idea of cultural reference points and learning things you carry into adulthood from these comics, about, just mythology and cultural history. Even the morality of these stories is good. They're very simple, universal moral messages. These aren't, this isn't going to instill in you kind of a, mature sensibility of right and wrong that you can carry into complex moral situations, but there is good moral heart to these stories, and that's something that should be like minimally expected. But in our current day and age, I feel like there's a lot of moral garbage being published as well. So seeing something that isn't moral garbage is a relief, and I want to support that. So I am 100% going to go add the Donald Duck version of this to my pull list as well. IDW's made a lot of their comics available. They used to have an ad somewhere about how they have wherever digital comics are sold, they're there. I don't know. You can get it on the Google Play Store. You can probably get it on your iPhone or Kindle. But, excuse me, cough squad. Bad cold. Okay. But, yeah. So if you can't go find the physical copies of these, get the digital copies. You will enjoy these. These are fun. They're expressive. They're energetic. Support the good comics where you can find them, guys, because I guess that was the tangent that I kind of lost the trail of thought on. Should you boycott or should you support? And I'm firmly in the camp of support the good stuff, and I won't judge you if you personally decide to boycott a company based on how they treated you. I was thinking about boycotting Marvel after I got called, after I asked a certain someone, so when is Silver Surfer coming out? And for my trouble, he suggested that I am a Nazi sympathizer. That's the kind of thing where I might be tempted to, throw away Marvel and say, good riddance, enough of that. But all I did was I decided I'm not going to buy that individual's work until he sees fit to apologize to me. And the problem is, since I'm pixels on a screen, he probably doesn't care enough about who I am to do that. But if that guy apologized to me, I'd be buying his books in a heartbeat because I want to support that industry. And my attitude towards him doesn't affect the whole company or all the other individuals who are part of that company. Let's imagine that everyone boycotted SJW Marvel or SJW IDW based on the behavior of certain creators. The way that boycott would have to work would be enough people boycotted it that the company either changed or collapsed. And that can be good for a company that's so bad there's no redeeming it. But if a company collapses, there's damage as a result of that. The people who work there who were not crazy political ideologues get hurt. The people who were enjoying the comics, the good comics they were publishing, would lose those comics. So if IDW collapsed because of SJW-ness, there would be no more of these imports from foreign countries of comics I'd never get to read. There is a good benefit of IDW continuing to do this type of work of importing these comics and translating them that I really want them to do in spite of any SJW-ness in their other titles. So so what's the test? How do you tell the difference between a company that's so bad you just got to throw it away, there's no hope for it, and a company that is maybe redeemable and can get back on the right track? And I think the secret is, if they are publishing a good comic, that's the indication that they at least have the capacity to make good comics still, and that if you support those good comics, they'll take the signal to make more of those good comics for you. So don't boycott all of SJW IDW. Don't boycott all of SJW Marvel. I understand if you boycott certain artists or creators who are just nasty to the fans, but boycott the heck out of the good stuff you can find. Now that I'm done with my test, I'm subscribed to most of the Comicsgate YouTube channels. I'm going to be looking for good recommendations, good things to read. Pay attention to this community, because this is a community that has a broad variety of political perspectives. This isn't just a little MAGA Trump group. I've met leftists, I've met atheists, I've met people all across the racial and gender spectrum, what have you. And what Comicsgate is, and to my understanding, is a group of people who are tired of poor quality in mainstream comics and want to see better comics being produced, there's maybe a unifying aspect that they don't like SJWs, but you could be a social justice leftist proponent of progressive policies and not have the toxic kind of behaviors that characterize SJWs. This can be an intellectually diverse movement. This can, even if you want to call it a movement, I'm not sure if I like calling a hashtag on Twitter of movement, but my perception of it is that this isn't a Trump group. This isn't a little, conservative Republican group. These are people who like comics and are recommending good comics to each other and having fun with each other by making fun of ridiculously bad comics. Support the good stuff you can find. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Why don't you like, comment, and subscribe? The series are New DuckTales, Uncle Scrooge. I haven't read Donald Duck yet, but I'm very confident that's going to be a similar thing to what's being done in the Uncle Scrooge books. The Halloween Hex #1, and those are all the ones I'm reading. All right, catch you later.